Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Coffee with the Critters, where we live stream here on our Facebook page, the Animal Behavior Center's Facebook page, every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern, unless otherwise notified. Sometimes we have cocktails with the critters, sometimes we have group discussions, sometimes we're traveling, and then sometimes we have guests. Like today, we have a returning guest for the first time back this year. Board certified behavior analyst Samantha Sarin. Those of you that have listened to our live streams in the past, either here on Coffee with the Critters and also in our memberships. We recorded a podcast together, and we also did a live stream group discussion in level 2. So she's joining us this morning, and we have some great topics to talk about. But before we get started, I will go ahead and just kind of do a recap. So for those of you that are interested in the work that we do, you can find our information on our website, theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. You can also email me directly at Lara, Lara, at theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. I know we got a lot of people emailing right now about consultations. So I do all kinds of live stream consultations and also individually and within our membership program. So if you are a member, you get your consultations at a deeply discounted price. Okay, let's keep going on. So we are starting to book events, both here on site and traveling. So you can pay attention to our event section on our website or on our Facebook page, or sign up for our email newsletter list where you don't have to check in. We'll check in with you and let you know everything that's going on. For those of you that are interested in the work that we do, we have annual online membership learning, level 1 for companion animals, level 2 for people more in the field of applied animal behavior, wanting to know how to train animals, how to modify behavior. You can find out more about that on our website. And just a quick recap of what has happened over this past week. We are starting to get back into training a lot of different animals. Every Tuesday, Saturday, and Sunday, I am training animals at the zoo. Every other day, I am training animals no matter what. So on those days, I do public training demonstrations. And a lot of the animals you have seen us with in the past, here's Monster. Kooky and Monster are outside and absolutely thriving. You can hear them every morning, and every time they see me drive by in my cart, Kooky will vocalize to me. So they are flying to our hands, loving being in the outdoors. They're hunting, I'm sure, rodents and bugs, and doing it very well. Some other things. So I think it was a little over a week ago, I had a guest who has been here on Coffee with the Critters with us as well. This is Angelina Kelly from Critchlow Alligator Sanctuary up in Athens, Michigan. She's been wanting to visit the Animal Behavior Center for at least a year and a half. So I invited her here to our new building, and then we went around the zoo and did some training. Here we're getting ready to jump in with the gators, and that was a lot of fun. So with her knowing as much as she knows about gators, this was really fun to have her here and training the gators side by side with me. So we trained the 13 younger gators and both of the older gators. I took her around and introduced her to some species of animals she's not very familiar with. She's not very familiar with birds. So whatever we're not familiar with can be some of our best learning potential, because we have to use what we know, our education, to understand what we're seeing right in front of us. So here she is with Kooky. And then I told her, hey, you want to do some bison training with me? Because I just started training the bison 2 weeks ago, for those of you that are following what we're doing in our level 2 membership. It's pretty cool. I've got a really good relationship with this bull, which I didn't know 2 weeks prior. And then she had never met Dylan Pickles. So I took her in with Dylan Pickles. So that's organized chaos in itself. And then we ended the visit with her coming back here to the center and interacting with Jelly Bean and some of the other birds in our care. So Angelina Kelly will be a guest on a future Coffee with the Critters, and I'm sure I will be up there visiting her back at Critchlow Alligator Sanctuary sometime yet this summer. So without further ado, Samantha, you ready to go on? Okay, I'm going to bring her up into the stream, and here she is. Samantha, good to have you on here again.
Good morning, Laura.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Very excited to be back, of course.
Yeah. So whenever Samantha and I talk, we always say it's like brain candy. It's like our little high.
Working out, geeking out.
Yep. So Samantha works primarily, well, exclusively with people.
Yeah. Lucky me.
You say lucky me.
I say it jokingly with love, of course.
Of course. So you work with people using applied behavior analysis. I use it I use it on people too. I prefer to use it with the animals, but people are involved a lot of times. Excuse me. So before I get started, let me go ahead and do the honor of introducing Samantha, and I'm going to read you her bio. Samantha Sarin is a board-certified behavior analyst. Samantha began in the human services field over 13 years ago, working with individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, including autism. She is employed full-time with Brett Denovi and Associates and also serves as an adjunct faculty at Rider University, where she teaches a graduate course on ethics and applied behavior analysis. She has been board certified for nearly 9 years and an animal lover for as long as she can remember. Samantha is passionate about functional behavior assessment, individualized approaches, environmental modifications, and parent caregiver training, and she especially enjoys considering how these practices translate to application with emails. With animals. Good. So this is what, and you know what? I can tell you changed your bio, and I think that, it's hard for us to talk about ourselves, but I think you have a lot of different qualifications and different things that you do that you didn't even put in there.
Thanks, Laura. I wanted to just update it just a little bit since it was like a year ago that I was on here.
Yeah. So when Samantha and I get together and talk, we've met only once, right, Samantha?
In person, yes.
Okay.
I came to the workshop in October.
Yeah, you came to a workshop. That was probably 3 years ago, this upcoming October, isn't it?
I think 2. I think it was 2019.
Okay. Was it 20? Okay. Well, you have to come back for another one. But Samantha and I have talked on the phone several times. We've been on live stream several times, podcast once. So you use applied behavior analysis primarily with people, but the application and the laws and paying attention to the individual is all this. It's a lot of the same approaches.
Yeah, the science is universal, is how I like to think of it. It's just, people have different expertise with certain populations. And even obviously within people, there's many areas of expertise.
Yes, exactly. I know. And a lot of times, like, I love having you on here. I love having Joel Vidovic, who's a BCBA as well, on here. And I like having you guys on here because you're working exclusively with people. And I'd like for viewers to see how that translate among species of all different species of different beings. And it really makes that connection when people listen to people working with ABA with people, children, or specializations in the field. What got you introduced to this or interested in this?
In ABA,
Mm-hmm.
I have always, I think, like thought like a behavior analyst, just very practically and very, look at a problem and come up with a solution, but looking at, everything that's sort of going on as a bigger picture sort of thing, because there's so many variables involved with behavior. So it's important to, have that broader perspective. But I've always sort of had that sort of analytic, I guess, approach to, making sense of the environment and of the world and what's going on. I mean, there's examples from when I was younger that I'll joke. I'll do mine. This is how I knew I was a behavior analyst before I was a behavior analyst. It was like taking data on myself when I was younger. Like who does something like that? Right. So there's it just sort of fit naturally, I think, with how I think.
Yeah.
And then I wound up working for a nonprofit company out of grad school, and that's when I was actually formally introduced to ABA. I had some, introduction through my coursework in grad school, and I just kind of just happened to land in the field and was like, okay, this is cool. This makes sense to me, and let me learn some more about it.
So you want to tell everybody a little bit of what you do now?
Sure. I work with kids and adults, mostly kids right now, that have challenging behavior problems. And the company that I work for, we work in all different sorts of settings. We have a lot of school work, but we also have a lot of homework, and I do a lot of homework. So working with families with their children in their homes. So I have that parent training component in there. That's super important. And Laura, as I was saying to you yesterday when we were kind of touching base about what to talk about today, that's something that we could spend a ton of time on, because the parent in what I do professionally is I guess you could say the parent, just like dog mom. It's the the caregiver, on your end. And there's so much training and that needs to go on there in order for the learner, the person, or the animal of interest to be successful. So that's the majority of what I'm doing right now, is working in homes with parents. And it's been very interesting over the last, year plus, obviously, with the pandemic and things going on, because it's just added another level of challenges for a lot of these families.
I'm sure because of what? Because they are now all spending a lot of time together at home.
Yep.
So maybe they get to see a little bit of what happens during the day that the teachers are usually working with.
It's definitely been rough for a lot of these families. It's funny though. It's because it sort of put things in perspective with the pandemic and everything going on. Because one of the families that I work with, the mom didn't say this, so these are not her words, but these are my words of what she had said to me. It was basically like, everybody's worried about COVID. Like, I'm dealing with autism. I'm dealing with autism every day, and I have for the past however many years my child's been around for. And so that's sort of where these families are at.
Yeah. Well, okay. Can you? I guess one of the things that keeps coming to mind that I want to ask you is, and this is probably not. I don't even know what kind of answer you're going to have, because I wouldn't be sure how I would answer this.
I'm a little nervous what this question is.
What are some of your most common behavior challenges that you're working with?
Oh, sure. That's okay. I have to tell you that I'm also now very conscious of my facial expressions during this broadcast, because I hope you don't screenshot another picture like you did for today's.
I did a screenshot of both Samantha and I. That was pretty horrible after I looked at it.
So, wow, Laura. Yep, there it is.
Oops. Okay. I promise you don't have to pay attention to your facial expressions.
So, I mean, a lot of the kids and adults that I work with, I mean, aggression is super common. Aggression, okay. Absolutely. Self-injurious behavior. So hitting themselves, biting themselves. Some kids have behaviors as severe as, poking themselves in the eye, whereas some kids may just pick at their skin a little bit. Same thing, you obviously have the range in what the topography of the behavior is. So for aggression, you can have kids that are, and adults, I keep saying kids because I'm working most with kids now, but for the majority of my career I was with adults, with people. So you can have someone that, comes at you and attempts to, bite you or hit you or push you, choke you, all sorts of things like that. Or you can have someone that, may just sort of smack you or push you, not super hard or as they're coming at you. So there's really obviously the varying intensities with all of these behaviors also. Destruction or disruption, as we might call it. So throwing things, hitting walls or breaking things, kicking out windows, all sorts of intense behaviors that are obviously a problem for the person and for society.
Yeah. So, very interesting, because when you're explaining this, I'm just thinking behavior. I'm not thinking necessarily species, but as you're explaining this, I'm going through all scenarios that I go through, like working with different, when working with self-injurious behaviors, that's I don't know how you feel about it, but it brings up a lot of anxiety in me. You know what I mean? When I'm watching an animal do self-injurious behavior, like, you want to stop it, you want to interfere, but you got to make sure that interference isn't a reinforcer for the behavior, for the stress and the behavior to continue. Because a lot of times, I mean, from what I see, this is coping mechanisms. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely tough. For me, I think I have trouble with when I see aggression that's directed at family members. I think that's one of the harder ones for me to see. Or, so if I'm working with a learner and they are aggressive to their younger sibling, or they're aggressive to their parents, that can be tough to see. But I mean, self-injurious behavior, absolutely. And again, depending on what it looks like, can be really hard to just observe. And like you're saying, your intervention obviously, it depends on what the function of the self-injurious behavior is. But there's times where the correct intervention is to not respond, and that can be challenging.
Yeah, that can be really hard. So speaking of functions of behavior, do we want to start off? Because I know we're going to talk about 3 different things today, and we're going to do kind of a recap on functional assessments. Because I believe, was that a topic of the podcast we had in level 1 or level 2?
I think so. I think it was the podcast.
Do you want to start off for those that may not be in our memberships or don't know? Do you want to explain what a functional assessment is?
Sure. So one of the things when Laura and I were just, chatting was, my question was, do you guys, in the animal world use functional analysis? And so that sort of opened this door to this larger conversation of, what is functional assessment and is it used in the animal world? And it is, was the answer to that, but not nearly as in the way that it is in the people world. So functional, there's the umbrella term is functional behavior assessment, which can capture a bunch of different, methodologies for doing this process. But the process that we're talking about here is getting to know the why of the behavior. So everybody, everyone engages in behaviors, whatever that behavior may be. And the functional assessment part is that we're trying to figure out the why piece. And that's so important because then we know how to intervene. There's a cat in front of me. Making her debut. So with that umbrella term, the functional behavior assessment, the gold standard, as we say in applied behavior analysis, is functional analysis. And that is a very strategic way of manipulating consequences under certain conditions. And the reason that you do this is to figure out exactly, where the responding occurs, and the responding indicates what the function is. Aside from functional analysis, there's other procedures. Functional analysis is not, the most common, I would say, method for doing a functional behavior assessment, because there's just limitations with it. That you have to have advanced training. So not everyone can do functional analysis. You don't have to have, but often you would need like a clinic-like setting. To do like a standard functional analysis typically happens in a treatment room, where you can observe from one side of a window where you can see in, but your learner can't see out, and there's typically one therapist in there. So there's resource issues that deter the actual functional analysis procedure from happening. So under that umbrella, there's other methods that we use, which may just be direct observation. So we go in and we look and see what's going on, and we take data on what happens before that behavior happens, what happens after that behavior, what exactly that behavior looks like, who's present in the environment when it's happening, what time is it happening, all sorts of data that you can think of we're taking when we're doing those direct observations. We also do interviews, so we may ask, depending on what the learner's level of functioning and their ability is, verbally, we may ask them what's going on. I've worked with learners where I'll be very, be very real, just sit down and be like, yeah, what's going on with you, doing this, whatever the behavior is. I used to work with a younger guy with Asperger's that would hit himself in the head. And after I observed this kid a few times, I'm like, I'm going to just have a conversation with him. So I sat him down. I was like, yo, buddy, why are you hitting yourself in the head? Like, what's going on with that? Tell me about that. And he straight up told me, he goes, my mom makes me eat food that I don't like. So when she does that, I hit myself in the head and then I don't have to eat it. I was like,
oh, so he's learned.
Thank you.
So he's learned that in certain instances where if he were to hit himself in the head, the current environment, whatever's happening, will stop or go away, or will work for him.
Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't use that strategy if I thought, that the function may be attention, obviously, because then, I would potentially reinforcing the behavior that I'm trying to essentially stop. So that's not obviously my go-to strategy. A lot of the learners I work with, you can't do that anyway. It's just not possible to have that kind of conversation.
There's so many things you're talking about I want to talk about. And I say that a lot with people in the animal world. Be careful what you're reinforcing. Do you know what behaviors you're reinforcing? Because a lot of times you're reinforcing before you even know it, the very behavior you're trying to prevent from happening. So I tell people, if you see, no matter if it's a desired behavior and undesired behavior, you see that behavior maintain or increase, it's being reinforced. So that's the observable, measurable behavior where we can pay attention to on a hourly, weekly, monthly basis to understand, are we effectively changing behavior? And something else you said too, Samantha, where I'm thinking, whenever you're talking people, I'm thinking ABA in the animal world. And this isn't all the time, but with working, a lot of times working with animals, we're working with individuals that do not have the opportunity to verbally communicate effectively. You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
When working with a bear, we don't get to have a conversation. We can't say, hey, what's wrong or what's going on. We can't say that out of our mouth, but we can say it through our conversation we're having with training. That's why a lot of times, like when I'm getting ready to introduce a person to an animal or when I'm getting ready to train an animal, I need a good read on their behavior. And I haven't seen them in 12 hours. I went home, went out to dinner with friends, slept, got up, got ready. There's a lot of behavior that that you could have been engaging in since I've been gone. So the next morning or the next time I interact with them, I will just start some pretty basic training, knowing like, turn your head to the left, touch a target, turn your head to the right, touch a target, come to me when I ask. Those are all ways for me to read behavior and try to get that's my best way of saying, hey, how are you doing? What's happening today? Are you good? Are you not good? Because like even yesterday, I was training the lynx and a pair of Siberian lynx, and I haven't trained them in a long time, but they were following me. I'm reading their behavior of how they're walking, how fast they're walking, how slow they're walking. Are they sniffing the air? Are they sniffing the ground? Are they sniffing my target stick? Are they doing behaviors I'm asking them to do? That's all a way for me to say, hey, how's it going? What is going on with you? And then I reached the target stick up in the air for both of them to reach up, and they put their paws up and they touched their nose to the target stick. The female did it with, like, there was no causes of concerns, but what I noticed when I asked the male, he almost hesitated in jumping up, like his back was hurting. I don't know, but that's a way for me to, so I put him up on the side wall like I usually do and start inspecting his body and start asking him to move. So I just had a conversation with the male lynx. Hey, how you doing? Something's up. What is it?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a very small number of learners that I'm actually able to just interview them directly. The majority of the interviewing comes from, with parents, with caregivers, with staff. So, you get information from those sources. And obviously you have to be careful with that too, because people aren't always accurate reporters, and not even, maliciously. It's just, sometimes you think something may happen this way, but in reality, what's actually going on is a little different. So that's why, the observation piece is so important too, so that you're getting all of the information to see what's going on. So that's part of this assessment process, right? And that's a lot of what I would say probably is like the majority of what's going on in the animal world versus, the functional analysis. Just like with people, that's what's happening more often is that larger, less formal process of functional behavior assessment.
So, okay, great. And thinking more ways like, so when you're putting together like a behavior change plan, what information are you gathering before that?
That information is the assessment. That's what we're looking for. So we're looking to see, what behaviors are happening. What exactly do they look like? We want to determine function as best as we can. And again, unless we're doing that actual functional analysis and that experimental manipulation of the consequences, then it's a hypothesis. So it's our best guess, right, as to what's going on with why is this behavior happening. And then we select interventions based on what we think or know the function is. So if I have a learner that is being disruptive because they, want their iPad, then I'm going to go in and look and see if, is there a skill deficit? Is that the reason that the disruption is occurring, because they lack a good way to request the iPad? Is it because they were told that they couldn't have something else, so now they're engaging in disruptive behavior? So it depends on the reason that they're doing it. We select the intervention. Is it because mom or dad hasn't interacted with them in 10 minutes that they're going to engage in disruption? Then we're going to take a look and at the interaction between them and mom and dad and see if we can enrich that.
Yeah. And, I know it was on here. I think we even brought this up in the workshop that you were at, where one of the attendees was saying, because I think there was a few BCBAs in that workshop. One of the attendees was telling us a story about a student in their classroom. I can't remember all the details, but it was something with his teeth, would bite things in certain situations. And I can't remember, there was a particular situation where this kid would bite something, and I don't know if it was other people or a book or whatever, but when somebody asked him, somebody took the time to ask him, why are you doing this behavior? It had come up where he had said, when this certain instant happens, my teeth hurt. So, I mean, once you can get that extra information like that, then you're like, oh, okay, well, now we can better control the environment. Now I know why you're doing this. Now we can better control the environment to, if it's a stressful situation, we can control it without anybody having to feel that anxiety and stress.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's also something that we always want to consider. It's also in our ethics code, as is doing, that functional behavior assessment part of our code. There's a piece in there that we need to consider like medical causes of behavior. So with that case, if there's, something going on, then we would refer him to a dentist to have him get the teeth checked out and see what's causing pain there. Or I have a learner that has, headaches. We want to make sure we're consulting with the primary care physician or a neurologist, as to what's going on there. So you obviously don't want to intervene with like a traditional behavior plan. If there's a medical cause of the behavior, you're not going to get anywhere, and you're not going to benefit the learner at all.
In the same here, I mean, like one of the first things when people will contact me for a behavior consult, no matter what the species, I try to rule out anything medical first. Has the animal been to the veterinarian? Because you can sit here and pay me all the money you want for this consultation. If there is an underlying medical issue that needs to be addressed. Uh-huh. So we know what we're dealing with. And if then we need to go into or implement in addition to a behavior modification plan, then we can go from there. Okay, so with talking about that, identifying reinforcers for underlying behavior, I know you told me yesterday you could talk forever about prevention.
Yeah, absolutely. So another one, I guess, things that I'm super interested in is the environment and preventative interventions within the environment. Those are very desired in the ABA world because they're looked at as, like the positive behavior supports. It's nothing on the consequence end, which depending on, the regulations that you're operating under or the requirements of a particular funding source, or some of those interventions may not even be allowed. They prefer that you try everything, sort of proactively. So these sorts of interventions are very well received in the ABA world also, but they're I think, clever in many ways, because you need to sort of think ahead of time and intervene, in advance. And there's not always that payoff with those types of interventions too. So it can be difficult for people to get buy-in on doing them. Right. So if, and this, I guess, would go to like the parent caregiver training piece, but if you're trying to have a parent do something proactively, so let's say that, your child is throwing a tantrum because you haven't given them attention. It's difficult for a parent, I would say, to give, to deliver attention once every 10, 15 minutes to the child. And there may not be, for the parent, that immediate reward to doing that, right? But we're looking at it as, there's the absence of a tantrum if you do this, but there's a lot of effort going in on the part of the parent to do that proactive piece. So it can be tough sometimes to get buy-in for those types of intervention, but they can be very successful. With the environmental piece, that's my favorite, because you don't have to rely on typically a person to do that. If you're directly intervening in the environment. Although sometimes the environmental interventions do need some sort of, like the person to do something for it. So one of the families that we work with, we have locks on their doors because their children elope outside in the middle of the night. And obviously huge safety concern. So we have locks on their doors that are, out of reach and whatnot. But the parents have to put those locks on, right? They don't just automatically happen. So sometimes with the environmental interventions, there's still a level of, person involvement that you need there. I try to automate things as best as possible to remove that piece, but it's not always possible.
Yeah, and in the same here, rearranging the environment to prevent unwanted behavior and make it the best way to easily reinforce desired behavior.
So for you, I know you are constantly altering the way that your cages are set up for the birds, right? Like you'll move things around, and obviously that doesn't just happen itself. So you have people that have to do that, and the reason for doing that is to keep the birds engaged and have that change in their environment, right? So we know that it's good for them, and that likely will reduce challenging behaviors appearing.
Yeah.
But for staff to do that though is work for staff. So if something else comes up, or if they're not feeling like doing that, then they may not. And there's not that immediate consequence of, okay, there's no problem behavior, this whole week. So that's where with proactive interventions, you sometimes have that trouble with getting, the buy-in on the parent or staff end.
Yeah. Do you find that trying to figure out if this is a fair question to ask. Parents don't understand the importance. They won't implement it. If they don't implement it, the behavior doesn't change usually as fast as it could for the health of the individual.
I think go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I know on my end, I do a lot of explaining as to why I'm doing what I'm doing, because the more information I can give the other caregivers, the more they will want to implement what I'm suggesting to get the desired behavior.
For sure. So absolutely. So having, giving information and making sure that there's the understanding is of course important for buy-in on that end. I think for most of the families that I work with a lot of really good parents and families. And typically I would say the main barrier is just other things going on. So they have, so much going on with multiple kids or, their own lives or
life is happening.
Yeah, right. I'd say that's the biggest barrier to, okay, am I going to remember to put, this lock on this door at night? Or am I trying to get this kid in bed and, I'm cleaning up dinner and, oh my gosh, I have that meeting tomorrow at work that I didn't prepare for. So all of those things.
Yeah. And I find a lot of times, in the work that I do, I have to, when I'm working with other people, working with their animals through the people, I have to make it the easier I can make it to understand, the more they will implement it. So I find that in my work, what I do, for the people that do not or hesitate to implement what I'm suggesting, or not even hesitate, they just don't do it. It's usually because it's not convenient for them as the caregiver. It's not convenient. If it's not convenient for them, they're less likely to do it. So what I try to do is give them scenarios where this does not have to be hard. For instance, when you see a situation like this, boom, do this. So a lot of times, people want to come home from work at night. They have animals in their house, but they want to come home from work and they want to sit and relax. They want to sit down. They want to watch TV. They want to eat. So I think of that in their daily life. And I just say, here's one quick little behavior modification plan you can put into place. And here's your reminder. Every time that commercial comes on that TV, boom, that's when you turn and you do this with your animal. And I make it so super simple for them to implement, because Samantha, if I can get them to see that, so you have a commercial once every 7 minutes, I don't know, however often it is, you do that throughout a program, a series, you can have several training sessions. And by the end of that hour, you can see the behavior change. And if I can get those people to see the behavior change, usually, boom, that's the reinforcer behind why they want to, okay, let's do the next step in the behavior change plan.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I like that. I like using something that's, existing in the environment as a cue or a prompt for the caregiver. So like commercials, that's awesome. I've used just a timer on a watch. So it beeps every, so often. And then the parent or the staff does whatever it is. There's always going to be though, so I do not have children. My children all have fur. So one of my, I guess oh man, this might be what it's like to be an actual parent to a human moments was Olivia. As you know, my dog Olivia has a lot of anxiety issues, and she had gotten into the habit of, I'm going to wake up, multiple times a night and go outside. And it was not to go to the bathroom. She just, for whatever reason, this became the thing that she was doing. So I had told her, that behavior is that this was going on. And she asked me, she's like, okay, do you think you can ignore her? And I'm like, yeah, no problem. Of course I can ignore her, So then that night it comes and it's I don't know, 2 or 3 in the morning, and I'm getting pawed at, and I hear, I'm getting, and I'm like, okay, no, I'm just going to ignore this. I don't know, maybe 5 minutes is probably a generous estimate. A couple minutes went by, and I was like, I'm letting her outside. And I get up, and I'm like, go. And I was like, oh man, really, Samantha? This is exactly what you talk to people about not doing. But for me, in that moment, the contingencies at play were I'm tired. I don't feel like dealing with this. Maybe this is going to help, for the next couple of nights, but I'm in this night right now, and this is the easiest solution. So this is what I'm going to do. So, keeping those sort of things, I think, in your mind when you're the professional in the role, there's so many challenges for the people that we're asking to implement things.
Yeah, there are, because if they don't understand, intermittent schedules of reinforcement, extinction, how this stuff works, why is the dog pawing at you in the first place? I mean, obviously, what's the reinforcer? It doesn't have to does it have to go outside? I don't know. Does it want to go outside? Is that the reinforcer being outside? Is the reinforcer it's because it's attention from you because you get up? It's part of the reinforcer. Those are things that we have to go through. And those are things that I go through. I mean, your situation there that's why if I'm potty training a puppy, I will potty train that puppy. I will be so intent on doing it within the first week to get it potty trained. Boom. I know this is what's going to happen. If you put the puppy in a crate at night, yes, it whines, it wants out. And you're trying to figure out, does it have to really go to the bathroom? Or because if it doesn't have to go to the bathroom and you let it out, you just reinforce the behavior of whining. You know what I mean? And sometimes it only takes once and that animal learns. That's what gets its behavior. So I'm just trying to think. Oh, counter conditioning. We've got about 10 minutes left. Do we want to talk about, so we're talking about FAs, prevention, being proactive versus reactive. So prevention as in identifying there may be a potential behavior concern here, and before this behavior gets any more intense or starts throwing up more red flags, I need to intervene now to make sure to find out why the behavior is happening in the first place.
Or even enrichment. Enrichment is prevention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And talk about that, of course, obviously for a long time.
Well, yeah, let's talk about that on both of our ends. You want to start first?
I mean, yeah. So just it's exactly what it sounds like. It's making, putting lots of awesome, fun things, opportunities. Change can also be, change in itself can be a means of enrichment. So just making the environment full of fun stuff for the person or for the animal, so that they're engaging with all of those different things and receiving, stimulation from those interactions, versus not having that, and then, looking for that sort of engagement through undesired methods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And something I can add to that is I always say foraging, creating situations where the animal has to search for its food and work for its food. Foraging is always a part of every behavior modification plan I put in place. So in order to change behavior, we have to replace that behavior with another behavior. And a lot of times it's foraging, enrichment, especially in situations where animals I'm working with, if I'm using positive reinforcement training. So what I'm doing is I'm getting all this behavior that I want, or that me and the animal needs in the long term. I'm pairing myself with the animal's positive reinforcers, and I'm delivering reinforcers for behaviors I want to see maintain or increase. A lot of times what I'll see is gathering my list of reinforcers, because I've paired myself with the positive consistently. It's not long before I become a desired person or desired being for that animal to be with. So I don't even need to dispense the favored treats anymore. I don't have to dispense the favored toys. Well, I still do, but not, as much. Then that animal I start seeing, I want to prevent overbonding. I want to maintain or create independence. So the animal doesn't have to rely on me for its doesn't have to rely on me for its enrichment. It can find enrichment other places other than myself.
Absolutely. We run into that with kids and adults too. Obviously, again, depending on, sort of their level of functioning and where they're at with, navigating their world and accessing things themselves. But yeah, there can be where they become dependent on staff or their parents for things, and we're always looking to make sure we either address that if it's already an issue, or the way that we're intervening doesn't create that.
So while talking about counter conditioning, meaning retraining, meaning a behavior was already learned, now we want to retrain and show that this individual can get a reinforcer out of doing an alternate behavior. With that being said, Samantha, Debbie asked a question. Debbie says, Samantha, how did you resolve the nighttime issue?
So the other suggestion from the vet behaviorist was to make sure that Olivia had enough engagement during the day so that she wasn't waking up at night. So to do some training with her before bedtime. And then I had already started also making sure that I let her out right before bedtime in case it was that she needed to go to the bathroom. So a couple nights of that wound up. And then I think like maybe one night I was able to actually ignore her. Like the second time, I think she got up, because I'm always like, oh, what if she does have to go to the bathroom? Let her out. So I think I probably did that like the first time, and then the second time she got up, I'm like, all right, no, she doesn't have to. She definitely just went. Broke that habit that she had formed. So she's been thankfully sleeping through the night.
Good. Because we know in situations where if we're going to use extinction, just ignore. When I try to implement a behavior change plan, if I'm going to include just ignoring. I'm including differential reinforcement, where I'm going to ignore this behavior, but I'm going to deliver reinforcers for other behaviors. Or in prevention, like your veterinary behaviorist suggested, getting the exercise, making sure it's sleeping through the night, identifying reinforcers for the undesired behavior, which was what was it? Was it getting your attention? Is why your dog was pawing at you in the first place?
I think with Olivia, like, that it had just become a routine for her. So she one night woke up, went outside, and then woke up again the next night and went outside. And then that sort of just became what she was doing. So the access to outside, I don't know what she was doing outside. She could have been sneaking, eating grass because she likes to do that. There could have been an animal that was in the backyard that she saw the one night. So, that I don't know exactly what was maintaining.
But the behavior's changed.
It has.
Yeah. So now that you know, and that can be in a very annoying behavior because it disrupts sleep. And when you disrupt sleep, it can affect your eating. It can affect your daily life. It can affect your job.
Yeah. Olivia, go to sleep.
So when you have a situation like that, many times you're probably negatively reinforced into just preventing any other behavior issues similar to that escape avoidance behavior. Like, what was that? I don't want that happening again. Yeah. So counter conditioning. Anything else you want to say about it? I mean, that's
So I feel like we're doing a disservice to counter conditioning, but we can sneak a little bit of discussion in. So I mean, I guess counter conditioning I always think of as just it's classical conditioning, but it's like redoing it, right? So you have your operant conditioning and your classical conditioning, and what we've been talking about up to this point has been on the operant end. Whereas with classical conditioning, it's more of like association. So I hear something or I see something, and then I learn that it means, this. So with I know with dogs, because counter conditioning is like, a big strategy for Olivia, who's, super nervous. It's that presentation of that stimulus, and then there's that emotional response, typically, like a fear response. And the counter conditioning process is to take that stimulus, maybe it's a man, for example, with Olivia, it would definitely be a man, and to pair that response, instead of with her being afraid, I'm gonna feed her as soon as she sees that man, so that she then relearns what that stimulus means. So instead of there's that stimulus and something bad's gonna happen, I'm afraid, there's that stimulus and, oh cool, I'm getting these awesome treats. So that the counter conditioning is just sort of relearning those stimuli and what they mean, what the relevance is.
And usually the longer the undesired behavior, I mean, this is in my field of work, what I see, because I'm working with animals that have long lifespans, a lot. And I'm not talking just parrots. I'm going through all the animals I work with. A lot of the animals I work with have long lifespans. So if an undesired behavior has developed at a younger age and has allowed to continue without any kind of behavior modification plan, then that behavior usually becomes stronger, building that history of reinforcement. And then usually what happens is the behavior gets so bad, whatever bad means, intrusive, inconvenient, has started turning into a medical condition. That's what I mean by bad, intense, cause for serious concern now. Once it reaches that point, it has such a long history of reinforcement, meaning this behavior has been going on for a couple of years now, or 5 years or more. The longer it's going to take you to change it. And here's my concern with, if I don't have to counter condition, I don't want to. I'm going to prevent it from happening in the first place. Because the concern I have with counter conditioning and retraining is the animal or individual has already learned that this behavior, which serves a purpose for itself, but may be undesirable for other people, but this behavior serves a purpose and earns a reinforcer for this animal. It already knows that. So once you start changing that, okay, I want you to get that reinforcer for doing this alternate behavior that's not going to hurt you. Okay, yeah, you can retrain, counter condition, that the animal can get this reinforcer for this alternate behavior. But if the reinforcer is not delivered for that alternate behavior, even, I don't want to make this sound impossible, because it's not, you know what I mean? But it can be inconvenient for people. So if the animal stops receiving a reinforcer for the alternate behavior, it already knows, boom, go back to this one because it's delivered here. That's why I always use the analogy, once you learn 2 + 2 = 4, you don't forget it. You know what I mean? I've already learned that, and I don't care if it's alcohol abuse, drug use, self-stimulation, whatever it is. If it works for you, you've learned it.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's continuing, it's working.
Yeah. Yeah.
With the history of reinforcement thing that you said there, if you saw me smirking, I work with 2 kids right now. One of them is like 16 or 17. And the other one I just started with 2 weeks ago. He's in kindergarten, or pre-K actually. And the learner that I work with, that's the 16 or 17-year-old, I just started with him. And previously he was not wearing shoes in school, like all day, not wearing shoes. Obviously a problem. And we've had to get really creative in terms of, strategies and things that we're doing to get him to wear shoes. So I started in this kindergarten 2 weeks ago, and there's a little one running around and he doesn't have shoes on. And I'm like, oh, get shoes on that kid right now. Why isn't he wearing shoes? We're going to address that today, because I'm not addressing that in 10 years when it's so much harder to address when it's been allowed for 10 years. So the history of reinforcement is absolutely can be a big barrier for treatment if there's a strong and long history there.
And that's why, I tell people in the work that I do, if you don't understand a behavior, if I'm looking at an animal and I see a behavior, I'm like, the hell does that mean? It's like I'm page marking that behavior. Watch that again. What happens before it? What happens after it? What purpose is it serving? Because obviously, if it's caught my attention, it's enough for me to be concerned about it. So I want to make sure it doesn't advance in an undesirable direction. And usually undesirable to me means the future health of that animal is dependent upon this. Or even if it's a convenience or an inconvenience, I don't want this to sound selfish, but I want this to be real, because if I'm not, and I'm talking, a lot of the animals I work with are not necessarily companion animals, they're education animals. I do have several that I do live with and work with that are my companions. Not only do you need to be happy, but I need to be happy. And a lot of times people who are caring for others are putting everything else ahead of themselves. And here's my concern with that. If you are not happy, that individual that you're caring for is probably not going to get the best of what they can get. We'll end up paying for it.
True. Absolutely true.
Yeah.
That's that caregiver piece again.
Yeah. Yep. And there's caregiver burnout, and there's like, that's why I'm doing things like my vacations are getting ready to start. My time off is getting ready to start. It's coming. It was in my distant future. I saw it, but I am going to take it. I will take it because I need to get refreshed. Because once I'm away and refreshed, I can bounce back and boom, I may have just been in this situation where I need to change things, but I'm in it for so long that I can't get a clear picture. So I need to get out for a little bit so I can come back and do better.
Very important.
Yeah.
Easier said than done for many of us.
I know. But with that being said, Samantha, I know we're over our hour.
Shocker.
Did that fly?
I'll be here all day. We should revisit counter conditioning though, because like I said, I feel like we did a disservice to counter conditioning.
I know, because we just touched on it. Well, maybe I don't know if you'd be interested. Would you be interested in another podcast interview? Maybe we talk about counter conditioning.
Yeah, I think that'd be great also, because it's one of those things that, it can be very technical, a lot of the language and terminology, and there's a tendency, I think, to blur, things there. So I get into stuff like that. I don't mind having those discussions.
Perfect. Let's do it. I wanted, Samantha, I'm going to type this on the screen as you tell me. If people want to follow you, do you allow people to follow the work that you do?
So I would say you could request me on LinkedIn.
Okay. So what is your screen name on LinkedIn?
It should just be my full. It should just be Samantha Sarin.
Okay. Samantha Sarin.
My Facebook is not set up that way, as you know.
I know. So I was looking for you. I was like, I know it's something different. I know it's B. I should have said BC.
Yeah, I just have that set up so that I can access some of my full-time employers' work content. I don't use Facebook for personal at all. That's why it's set up that way.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So, I follow you and Brett both on LinkedIn. So that is where we can find you.
Yep. Brett's always putting content up. We have a lot of content up for those interested in ABA. It's 2 YouTube channels. Check out.
Are you guys on YouTube as well?
Yeah, we have 2 YouTube channels.
Okay.
Check out. You should just be able to search Brett Denovi and Associates, and they should come up. One of them is more focused on like explaining, it's our hacking behavior channel. I think I have a couple of videos on there that I've done, but essentially our behavior analysts will pick just a brief topic and sort of dive into it and explain it. Just break down the science of it. So they're good for learning, and they're, like I said, they're short.
Okay. So Denovi is DENOVI.
DIN.
DIN.
OVI.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Well, okay. We're going to have to run. I've got a lemur encounter in 20 minutes. I got to go get ready. So, Samantha, thank you again so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure. As you know.
Yeah. Always
excited.
Good. And I'll be reaching out to you and see if you want to do a podcast. If there's anything I can ever do for you, please don't hesitate in doing so. Do you know Dr. Evelyn Gould?
I've heard of her.
Okay.
Is she at Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine?
She's at Harvard.
Okay. Have you had her on? I recognize the name. Okay.
I've had her in level 2 on a podcast. I do believe we did a live stream with her. And she in return ended up asking me to do a webinar with her through a site called Connections. She deals with children and I'm going to say it wrong, like post-traumatic stress.
Okay.
Anxiety. Yeah, she was an amazing person to talk to as well. That would be really good to have a 3-way conversation.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. But, okay, so if you want to follow more of the work that Samantha does, my birds are getting ready to sound off. You can follow her on LinkedIn. If you want to find out more about the work we do here at the Animal Behavior Center, you can just go to our website, theanimalbehaviorcenter.com. We have our annual programs, level 1, level 2, for people interested in working with animals using applied behavior analysis. We have the podcasts. We also have our memberships are also different ones where you have them species specific. We have our webinars. We have all kinds of things. So stay tuned. We're working on our webinars, our workshops, constantly working on our memberships. And Samantha, I want to thank you again so much for coming on.
Very welcome. Thanks for having me, Laura. Have a good
Yeah,
one.
you're welcome. Good to see you. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right. Bye.